STEM fans, are you ready? Let's hear it for the world-class NASA STEM Stars team. From NASA centers across the country, we present Heather Maliska and Cathy Bahm.
Hello and welcome to NASA STEM Stars today. My name is Adeline Deinhardt and I am coming to you from home with Langley Research Center. And with me I have Heather Maliska and Cathy Bahm, who are out of Armstrong Flight Research Center. So we're coming from opposite sides of the country today to talk to you about the LowBoom flight demonstration mission. And we are so excited to get to hear all of your questions, and you get to hear some of our stories, and at the very end, we'll also leave you with a mission you can do from home. But I want to remind you to send any questions you have in the chat feature, and we can't wait to hear them. We might ask some of them throughout as we go, but then we'll also make sure and ask as many as we have time for closer to the end. So without further ado, Cathy, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to NASA?
Sure. Thanks for having us today, Adeline. So I grew up in New Jersey. I went to school in Piscataway, New Jersey. I left the great state of New Jersey for Texas. I went to Texas A&M for school. And you can see in the pictures my senior design project. We went to tested in a wind tunnel, and then the red vehicle we flew as our senior design project from Texas A&M. And then as part of Texas A&M, I got the opportunity to co-op with NASA Dryden at the time, now Armstrong, and worked in the structures branch for one semester and in the aeronautics branch for 2 semesters. And those are some of the pictures from my co-op time with the shuttle on the back of the 747 shuttle carrier aircraft, and actually the picture of us inside the engine of that 747. And then, you know, when I'm not at work, I like to spend time, and not in COVID, I like to spend time with our family and friends, and I especially like to travel. And the picture on the lower left is of me in Rome, and actually NASA paid for me to go to Italy. We did a paper there on one of my projects, so I was really lucky to get to go for NASA and represent NASA there. So I can tell you a little bit about, since I've been at NASA, the type of projects I've been on. The first, when I was a co-op, I worked in the sonic boom area on the SR-71. We recorded, we were in the middle of the desert recording the sonic booms of the SR-71. When I became a full-time engineer, I became a flight controls engineer. And for flight controls, we do simulation studies, and we test and design kind of the brains of the vehicle that work with, if you have a pilot, interacts with the pilot and controls the airplane, or if you have a computer on board, instead of a pilot, it's responsible for controlling the vehicle. So my first project is that black and white plane, the F-18 HARV, High Angle of Attack Research Vehicle. It was the first thrust vectoring aircraft, and now you see that capability and technology on the F-22s that the Air Force flies. And I came to Armstrong to work on aircraft, but then soon after I started here, I started working on the X-33, which is a demonstrator for a reusable launch vehicle. And after 5 years, we were building up the vehicle, but then they had a problem with the tank, the fuel tank. And so that project ended after that. NASA actually paid me to go back to grad school, and I went back to A&M after X-33. And then, which was really a great advantage of working for NASA. And when I got to come back, I got to work on X-38, which was a really fun project. X-38 was a crew return vehicle. It was a demonstrator for a vehicle that would sit on the small vehicle at the bottom of the picture is the crew return vehicle, and it would have sat on the space station, and then if they needed to return in an emergency situation, the vehicle would have returned, and under the parafoil that you see, the computer on board could precision land that return vehicle. When that project wrapped up, I was lucky enough to join the X-43 HyperX team. And the X-43 is the little black vehicle at the top, at the end of the rocket. And that was the first ever airframe integrated scramjet airplane. And I joined the project as a lead flight controls engineer for Flight 2. And in Flight 3, I became the deputy chief engineer. And the deputy chief engineer, what the chief engineers do is kind of integrate the technical work across all the disciplines. And so it was really cool. Flight 2 and Flight 3 were successful. Flight 2 was Mach 7 times the speed of sound. And the third flight was Mach 10 and 10 times the speed of sound. And we got a Guinness Book of World Record that we still, more than 15 years later, still have that Guinness Book of World Record. And so that was really exciting. And then we had the opportunity to join the Orion program, which, as many of you know, is the capsule that will take astronauts to the moon and beyond. And we were testing the abort system to ensure that if, in our case, if there was an emergency at the pad, that the abort system could pull the astronauts away to a safe distance away from the pad. And 10 years ago in May, that flight test happened, that launch happened in New Mexico, and it was really successful and was a really great project to be part of. And then I took some time and went up to headquarters in DC and was the deputy program director for the Integrated Aviation System program. And then I got the opportunity to come back to Armstrong and be the deputy project manager for LowBoom, which we'll talk more about later.
So you have a long history of experience with different NASA X-planes. And I mean, a Guinness Book of World Record, not very many people can say they've participated in that. That's super exciting. Heather, would you like to tell us? Oh, go ahead.
No, that was just one of the coolest things ever. So.
Yeah, I think it's super exciting for all of us. Now I definitely want to go look it up too, and I want to learn more. Heather, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the different projects you've worked on? And I know you've worked on a lot of these with Cathy too.
Yeah, we've worked a lot of the same projects. But first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and help reach out to students across the country. Just a few things about myself. I grew up in Wisconsin, in Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, a very small town there. And I went to high school at Monona Grove High School, and then went on to college at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I stayed in state and did everything there. I grew up wanting to be an astronaut. When I was 10 years old, I was really focused on the Teacher in Space activity. And then, of course, the Challenger exploded, which for me, it was a changing experience that really focused me on what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I spent my middle school and high school trying to get a job with NASA, if you will. So I did everything that I could to learn about NASA and figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And I ultimately focused in on engineering. And so I got my mechanical engineering degree, like I said, from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And while there, I tried to focus all of my efforts on kind of learning what an engineer did. So I was a part of the Mechanical Engineering Society. I was a president for our local aeronautics AIAA chapter. And so I tried to learn all that I could there. Through that AIAA chapter, I was able to learn about a summer program through NASA called the NASA Academy. Not quite the same thing as a co-op, but a summer program, a 10-week program that takes you to a specific center. My program was focused on leadership and learning how to be a leader. And so I went to, at that time, Dryden Flight Research Center, in which we've changed the name, of course, to Armstrong Flight Research Center here within the last few years. But I did that 10-week program there. And as you can see in the picture on the left side, our summer program had the same idea as Cathy's co-op program. We took the same picture in the 747 engine nacelle, so we had a few of us in that program. In that program, I did a lot of work in structures. I did some finite element analysis, and then when that program ended, it was my senior year in college, the summer before I graduated. They extended me an offer to work at Armstrong, and so I was undecided at the time if I wanted to get my master's degree or go into industry, and at that time, they had not been hiring very many new employees. So I jumped on the opportunity when they started to open up hiring again, and I took a job in the structures branch at Armstrong Flight Research Center. So I started out as a structures engineer. Aside from that, a little more things about myself, some of my interests outside of work. I have a family. I have 3 kids. I've been married for 18 years. And so we do a lot of outdoor stuff here in California. There's a lot to offer. So we do a lot of camping. We do a lot of mountain biking. Our kids do racing. They race mountain bikes. And so they keep us very busy. So if you go to the next chart, I can give you a little overview of kind of what I've been doing at NASA. So when I first started, after my summer program, I started out on 2 different projects. Like Cathy, I worked on the X-38. In my case, I did some of the structures work there. I installed some sensors on the back body flap of the aircraft, and I did the ground calibration. So I did a lot of installing of sensors and calibrating those sensors so that they could be used during flight. So I did that on the X-38, and then I moved on to the active aeroelastic wing, which was an aircraft that used the natural twist of the wing to try and control the aircraft. And so I didn't choose a picture here that shows the aircraft in flight because my job was focused on the ground testing of it and calibrating those sensors that we put on the wings of the aircraft. And so what's shown here is the aircraft without the nose on it, but it's got a lot of hardware underneath the wing, and we did a lot of pushing and pulling on the wings to test the sensors and calibrate the sensors to the loads that we were putting into the wings on the ground. So once we did that calibration, we could take the aircraft and do flight research with it. And so we did a lot of that, and I sat in the control room for some of those flights and watched how the sensors reacted as it was flying in flight. After that program, I became the lead structures engineer. So at Armstrong, we're a small center, and so when you start really young, you actually get a lot of responsibility. And so as a young engineer, I was a lead engineer on the Intelligent Flight Control System aircraft. And so here, again, I did a lot of the same ground calibrations of the sensors on the aircraft, and then we did flight research with that aircraft and the sensors that I calibrated. In this case, I actually got the opportunity, and you saw a photo of me in the previous slide standing in front of an F-18. I got the opportunity to fly in an F-18 as a research engineer to kind of figure out what the aircraft is doing during the maneuvers that I had requested to test the sensors that I installed on the aircraft. So I got that firsthand experience to figure out how the aircraft was reacting in flight as we maneuvered the aircraft. Let's see. After the IFCS, Intelligent Flight Control System, I started working on the Abort Flight Test Program, again with Cathy. Here I participated as a flight test article lead engineer. This program was the Pad Abort 1 program. My job was to focus on the next mission, which was the Ascent Abort mission. Here I was learning a lot and following along a lot with the pad abort team, and did a lot of the requirements work, gathering the requirements and making sure the requirements were met during flight. So I did a lot of the systems engineering. And it was on this program that I really learned how to be a leader and kind of stepped out of the structures engineering piece of things and focused on all of the engineering disciplines. And so I worked to integrate the people across the disciplines and make sure all those requirements were met during flight. So that was definitely a highlight of my career, was working on Pad Abort 1 and seeing that launch. We did a lot of work over several years for a 1.5-minute mission, but it was totally worth it and really exciting. After that program, as I kind of gathered more responsibilities and learned how to be a leader there, I decided that I wanted to be a project manager. So I moved over to the project management side of the house, so kind of stepped out of the engineering side, but moved into the project management side and started out on the X-48C project, which was a really good starting project for me. It's a smaller aircraft, but it was a really cool aircraft to work on. So I got to work with Boeing, I got to work with NASA, and I got to learn all of our processes at Armstrong Flight Research Center to make sure that the project moves smoothly through its flight test phase. After X-48, I moved over to the UAS Unmanned Aircraft System Integration into the National Airspace System project. That's a mouthful, and it's really hard to say fast. But that project was really cool because we tested an unmanned aircraft. It was called our Icona aircraft, and we did a lot of detect and avoid testing. So we were trying to figure out how to integrate an unmanned aircraft in the same airspace that we fly in today. So in the commercial airspace, trying to understand how that aircraft can on its own detect and avoid other aircraft and fly through that same airspace. So we did a lot of flight testing. That picture shows a few of the aircraft that the unmanned aircraft flew with. And so we would fly different maneuvers where we'd fly the aircraft close to our unmanned aircraft, and so the aircraft would detect the other airplanes and then maneuver away from them. So that was another really cool project to work on. I got to work with some really great people and some really cool airplanes. And then here today, as Cathy said, now I work on the LowBoom flight demonstration mission. I am a project manager here at Armstrong. I'm focused on making sure that Armstrong is providing all of the resources and providing all of the folks that are needed to support the LowBoom mission. So as you'll see, the LowBoom mission is spread across several different NASA centers. So each center has a project manager like me that's focused on making sure our center provides the resources that are needed for the project. So I work the LowBoom side, and then I work on the commercial supersonic technology project, where we're doing a little more of the technology from the mission side of the LowBoom mission.
Well, that's awesome. I think that both of your careers can really show students too how diverse your backgrounds can be, and how just because where you start doesn't always necessarily mean it's where you're going to end. But we have lots of really good questions coming in, and so I want to ask a couple of those first, if that's okay with you both. But one of our questions comes from seeing, I think, the picture of you with the pilot, and they're curious about pilots and NASA having pilots, and does NASA have their own pilots?
Yes, NASA has our own pilots. We have several test pilots. Most of them come from the military side. So once they've retired from the military, they come to work for us. So we have several test pilots at Armstrong, Armstrong being one of the aeronautics centers. We do a lot of the flight testing out at Armstrong at Edwards Air Force Base. And so, yes, we have our own test pilots.
Yes, and many of those pilots are assigned to missions. I do know that LowBoom has a pilot assigned to its project as well. Another
Yeah,
go ahead.
We have two of the best test pilots at Armstrong assigned to our projects. And we'll have Lockheed test pilots will fly also LowBoom, but Nils and the folks here will be flying our plane also.
Yes, and I know they're excited to eventually get to fly the airplane once we get to that part of the mission. Another question we have is, do the colors and the patterns on the aircraft signify anything, or are those a design aspect of the different X-planes that you've worked on?
Yeah, so part of the reason Harv was black was because we did some flow visualization where we would have smoke at the nose of the vehicle, and you would watch the vortices and the airflow over the nose and the wing. And so it was intentionally black so that you could see that airflow. And then the pad abort, even like the model behind you and Heather, the colors help us see the rotation. So you can see black and white. And so on the video, you can see how fast it's rotating just by how fast it's changing the colors. So some of it is intentional for the testing and to help give us data from the videos that we take.
Interesting. Another question we have is about the X-59, and they would like to know, how fast does it go, and why is it important to have a low-boom supersonic X-plane?
Heather, you want to take that one?
Do you want to go to the slide that talks about the kind of the fun facts of the X-59?
Yep. Yeah, it's the last, the one with the picture of the vehicle and the current state of the vehicle. It goes Mach 1.4, 1.4 times the speed of sound is the test case condition at 55,000 feet. And so if we bring up the slide with the features, we can show a little bit more detail of the low boom. Heather, do you want to talk about the importance of low boom?
Sure. Yeah, the X-59 aircraft, the low boom flight demonstration mission, is really focused on kind of the issue that we have that you can't fly supersonic over land. So there's a regulation that says in the United States you shall not fly supersonic over land. And in Europe, the regulation says you shall not fly supersonic and create a disturbance. And so the low boom flight demonstration mission is here to create an aircraft that makes a quieter boom or a thump as opposed to a louder boom. And so the aircraft is shaped such that it does make a quieter boom. And the plan there is to take this aircraft after Cathy's project has flight tested it, made sure that it's safe to fly, and then we move on to kind of validating that the sound of the aircraft is where we thought it would be and what we've been shooting for. And then ultimately to take it across the United States over several different communities, 4 or 5 different communities, and fly it and create this quieter thump and get survey information and get people's opinion as to the acceptability of the sound of the aircraft. And then from there, we hope to take that data and use that data and provide it to the folks making regulations so that they can create a new regulations that's based on the sound level of an aircraft as opposed to the speed of the aircraft. So Cathy, if you want to give the fun facts then.
Yeah, so X-59 is developed specifically to do that low noise, that thump. And so it has unique features just for that purpose. It's not a prototype vehicle in any way. It really is to test. It's really a noisemaker to ultimately do the community response testing. So if we go to the features chart, we can show everyone the unique layout of the vehicle. So the vehicle has a very long nose. It's over 30 feet in length, about 1/3 of the vehicle length. The total length of the vehicle is 96.8 feet. And part of the reason for that nose length is so that the shock waves coming off the nose don't combine quickly and reach the ground separate from the wing, which helps that thump or rolling kind of thunder kind of sound. And then we have the wing is a delta shape wing. And then another important feature is the you can see the engine that's kind of on top of the wing, and that shields the shock wave that would be generated by the engine, the inlet of the engine. And at the tail end, you can see the exhaust of the engine is kind of shielded also. And right at the top of the vertical tail there, you can see a small T-tail, and that T-tail helps us tailor or tweak the shock waves at the back of the vehicle, kind of making it as quiet as we possibly can. The other cool thing about X-planes in general is that because they're one-of-a-kind aircraft, we tend to, we call it like more of a Franken aircraft, where most of the pieces come from other aircraft. So in our case, the canopy is from the T-38. The ejection seat is also T-38. The landing gear is F-16. The engine that we talked about earlier is F-414 from an F-18. And there's a lot of other F-16, T-50 systems in this aircraft that are specially integrated for our use, but it saves us time and money for developing those specific systems as opposed to reusing. And as you can see from the picture, there's no front window. Because of this really long nose, you can't see forward. So we have special instrumentation packages and also a forward vision system for landing. But NASA Langley has developed a external vision system where there's a camera on the nose of the vehicle, and it allows the pilot to have a kind of simulated vision in the cockpit with a high def monitor, and allowing the pilot the forward vision that you won't get from, you know, a window that a normal aircraft would have. And then in the bottom right of that chart, it shows kind of our latest picture of the vehicle. One of my friends says it looks like a Lego project, but it's not. You can see the nose is not there, so you're missing that first 30 feet, but you can see where the gray area is. That's kind of the cockpit area, and then the wing is the yellow. The landing gear would be on the bottom side of where the green patch is in the yellow, and at the back end is where the tail would be. The tail is actually being delivered to Lockheed this week, the vertical tail, so that'll be exciting, but you can slowly see it coming together and becoming a real airplane.
That's so exciting, and there's so much to look forward to, and we encourage everyone at home to keep looking out for LowBoom and seeing all the exciting milestones that are coming up for this mission. But we're almost out of time, so do either of you have any last final bits of anything that you would like to share with students? It can be advice or a fun fact that you want to share, maybe your favorite NASA memory.
Well, I'll go first. I guess my favorite NASA memory, we'll go with that one, was definitely, I have lots of memories, but I think the best memory was actually being involved in the Pad Abort 1 launch and finally seeing that launch off. I think some of the other cool memories that I had was being able to have that flight and also being able to go to Kennedy Space Center for work and touring the space shuttle while it was still on the gantry, but then also being able to share some of that with my kids. I think one of the biggest things that I'll take away is we had a take your kids to work day, and I was able to take my kids in, and we actually got to chat live with the astronauts on the space station. I think that was really, really cool for my kids to see. Cathy, do you have a good memory?
Instead of a memory, I'll give, if folks want to make the memories and come work at NASA, I would say the best thing to do is, work hard. Keep it up, stay focused, decide on what you want to do, make sure it's something that you're good at and that you love doing, because it's hard, it's not easy. So if you love it, it'll be worth it. And it's not easy, but stay focused, work hard, and, look for the opportunities to intern. We have intern opportunities even now at the high school level. And you can start co-oping as early as high school and into college. And so just do what works for you.
Yes, and I definitely echo that. You can start applying for internships with NASA at 16, and I too started as a NASA intern, so it's always a good option and to follow your dreams and go forward. But if you have more information or questions about LowBoom, I highly encourage you to check out the nasa.gov website and also the LowBoom portion of the NASA website. It has lots of good information, and you can also get involved on any of the social media platforms. We're always sharing as much as we can with the public to help you be as excited as we are. But for all of you at home that are looking to continue this learning and your own mission, I encourage you to check out our 3-2-1 takeoff activity and create your very own X-plane. You can design it yourself, and you might even take a design that you learned from one of our X-planes today, and then you can launch it from a drinking straw. That can be your takeoff portion. But if you decide to make it, share them with us on social media and #NextGenSTEM, and we can't wait to see what you have. And if you're super excited, make sure to catch us on another NASA STEM Stars. Next week, we have NASA STEM Stars in Espanol with the James Webb Telescope, talking about different instrumentation on the telescope, and that will be July 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for joining us.